Hey all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're doing a RPG horror story. This one is going to be the horror of the Fae horror. Could also be Pathfinder horror, because that's the system we were using. You know when horror is coming out of a game that Pathfinder is one of the first things you think about. One of the first things beyond systems which are unmentionable and will never be mentioned on my channel. That's right, I said never. But we'll see if that ever holds up. You know, never say never again, right? But this particular horror story is a game I found on meetup.com. I love meetup.com. I've met a lot of great players on there. I met a great player in this game. But the game itself was awful, and the majority of the people at the table were also terrible. They were bad players. Some of them were bad human beings. So right away you want to divorce yourself of that situation. But basically, I met on Meetup.com. I met this gentleman who was running a game. Said, "Oh, I'm running a Pathfinder game." And I said, I'm interested. I'm interested in all kinds of games, any kind of game. Meet all the local players, get this local sense of community going on. I can steal the best players. I can give you my worst players, or we can trade players back and forth. The more options the players have, the happier they'll be. Because if they don't like Pathfinder, they can come with me. If they don't like what I'm doing, they can go with you. If everybody knows each other, it's going to be a better world for everyone. I said, what are you doing with Pathfinder? And he's like, oh, I'm running a Golarion. And I said, oh, Golarion, that's an amazing setting. I've read through that setting book like 2 or 3 times. I know all about Golarion. I'm like, where in Golarion? And he said, it's been a while since we actually went into the game. I'm trying to remember what the name of the place was, but it's one of the more aristocratic kingdoms, and I wasn't really a fan of the area. And I said, oh, well, okay, well, I'll go through and I'll shoot you an email about potential characters I could play from that area. So I went through and I pulled up that section of Golarion, and I read through it. As I'm reading, I'm marking down everything I can make a character out of. So they have these assassins that I'm like, oh, I could be an assassin or a bodyguard. And I'm like, oh, they have bodyguards, and the bodyguards are awesome. They're from the far north, so they're not from this area that I don't like. It might have been, no, I can't remember the name of the area, but the bodyguards are from the land of the Linorm Kings, and I'm like, I love that place. It's Vikings and Linorms. I don't like Linorms much, but they're better than the area we're in. So. And I went through and I'm like, oh, there are elves here, there are rangers here, there's goblins, like right next door. It could be a goblin, or a hobgoblin, as they say in Pathfinder. So I gave him a list of like 5 or 7 characters. I'm like, oh, plus, of course, I could be a cleric. I love clerics. And he said, oh, this bodyguard, that's the best one. That fits best with my campaign, with the rest of the party. And I'm like, awesome, no problem. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's doing a good job. He's thinking about the campaign. He's screening his players. So he's got something in mind. He's prepping the party, not just the world, but the party. So I had pretty high expectations coming in. I'm like, it's an awesome setting. The GM seems to be prepping well, and the world is awesome. I know because I've read the world before. So I show up, and he puts us into the game. So we start off, and first of all, I did my little introduction. Hi, I'm Dave, and I come from a pro wrestling background, and right now I'm working in sales, and I like role playing, and I don't like hack and slash, and so I give my intro, and I made sure everybody gave some kind of intro about themselves. The GM wasn't going to do that, so I made sure I did that, just because, it helps everybody know everybody and get on the same page right off the bat. So He started us off in a tavern, which is fine. I have no problem with that trope. If you read The White Company, they started off in a tavern, and The White Company is amazing. I believe it's Arthur Conan Doyle wrote it. Yes, and it's my favorite piece of work I've read from him. I've read several. So we start off in a tavern, and we start role playing, or I start role playing. I start role playing, fortunately, with the guy next to me, and he was really good. I described what my character looked like. I start talking to him in character, and he described what his character looked like, and we start talking back and forth. So we had a nice little intro, and then my character started talking to one of the other players, and it was like very quickly evident that not only did he have nothing prepped for his character, but he didn't care and he didn't take the game seriously. I was like, oh, where are you from? And he's like, I don't know, player handbook, page 3, that's me. I'm a bard, and I'm like talking in character. Please, I've already explained to you that I'm here for role playing. So that's the thing. Once you say what you're there for, if you don't get it, you can tell them, why didn't you fucking bring this up when I told you why I was here? You could have saved me the time, the hassle of interacting with you. We could have just not interacted at all. We both would have been happier. But he didn't, so we're, I quickly stopped talking to him. Like, he doesn't know where he's from. He's metagaming. That's fine. I'll talk to the next guy. And the next guy is playing, and we've all gamed with this guy, actually. He's a chaotic neutral gnome illusionist. We've all gamed with him. Everyone has had this same character show up in the party at one time or another, if you're playing Pathfinder. So, he was making jokes and offhand comments, and he wasn't really out of character, but his character clearly didn't fit in with the world. Like, he was making references to, like, Mickey Mouse and like real world stuff, and I was like, that your character wouldn't know that. He's from a different world. He's from a different universe. Can we get back into the game? I want to be in the game. But I wasn't getting that from him, so so I moved on. I moved back to the guy I was role playing with, and he was awesome. So we started getting up a nice rapport, and the other group, the other players, could see that we were having fun role playing, that our characters were interesting and well thought out. And they actually started to come around. They started to role play with us a little bit, and they were doing well. It was fine. And then, just as the group is really just starting to come together and form this team, the GM interjects, and he throws in an NPC, and he's like, a woman rushes up to your table, and she says, help me, I've been attacked on the road, you must come with me and help me. And, I turned to the NPC, and my character was like, how much will you pay us? And she's like, no, just help me. A goodly person would help me. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm a fucking mercenary, so go fuck yourself. You have no money. Which is what my character would do. And my character, as I established, was approved by the GM. The GM knew this about my character, that he's a greedy mercenary, and his background. Now, he had personal goals that he was going to pursue. He wasn't like, my only backstory is being a mercenary. He was like, well, I have all of these goals I'm going to pursue, and then, a good plot hook for me would have to pretty much involve money to get me off of my goals. So I told her to fuck off, and then I looked at the GM, and I was thinking in a meta context. I was like, we're all role-playing well. We're not bored. Nobody's bored. Even the other guys who weren't at first into it are getting into it. Why would you interrupt us? We're having fun. Why would you interrupt us and throw us an NPC? Especially when the NPC is so fucking cardboard. She has a generic quest, no description of what she looks like, and when I did try to press her for some more information, and she wouldn't give us more info. She just wanted us to come with her, So I was like, no. But she kept coming back, and I told her, I'm going to clobber you if you don't leave us alone. But eventually, the rest of the group, they could see that the GM was getting angry, and I was getting angry because the GM is trying to derail our role playing for some reason. And so they eventually they started going with her. So I kind of formed a friendship with this guy. So with Mike Lopez actually. So I went with them, and we went out into the village, and I'm like, okay, what does the village look like? The GM didn't really know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know what the village looks like? And he's like, it's just a village. And I'm like, what kind of village? Is it a farming community? Is it a lumber community? Is it a fishing community? Is it a big city? A small city? Are they made out of brick or wood or stone or timber? Give me something so I can picture it where we are, and that my picture lines up with everybody else's picture. And he really wouldn't. So we went through, and she led us back to the temple. And I'm like, oh, okay, temple, okay. Well, I got my holy symbol of the god. Oh, a holy symbol of the god that I worship. I know about the deities of Galarion, so that's awesome. I'm like, what kind of temple is it? Who's the temple dedicated to? And he looks at me. He's like, oh, it's just a generic temple. And I'm like, generic temple? No. This temple has to be dedicated to some god. Is it? Or it's a pantheon temple. It's got every god. It's got a little shrine to every god. That's cool too. Is that what you mean by generic temple? And he's like, oh no, it's just a generic temple. And I'm like, man, you're using a pre-established setting so that we can all know this before you even start. You don't have to make anything up on the fly. I can see you haven't prepped, but you don't have to make it up on the fly because it's already made for you. That's the beauty of using a pre-made setting. So why don't you just pick a deity at random out of the book, please? It will be better than having nothing. So he picked one out of the book at random, and he's like, oh, it's a temple of Calastria. And I'm like, there, fine, thank you. So I'm getting angry because he's not prepped, and he's starting to railroad us. And I don't mind a railroad if that's what you present the game as. If you're like, okay, guys, we're going to have this railroad. It'll be a nice little module. And in fact, he was using a module, but he didn't tell us that. So I don't mind that if you tell me. But if you tell me it's going to be a sandbox and I can go anywhere and do anything, and then you try to railroad me, now I'm going to have a problem. Because either you're an idiot or you're a liar. And I don't like either one of those types of people. So we're coming through, we go into the temple, and there's this, we meet the priest, who also had no description. It's just, I'm a generic priest. And, what does a priest look like? He looks like a priest. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing, man? He looks like a priest. But we went with the priest and said, oh, there's something has ambushed them on the road. You have to go help. And again, my character is like, well, that has nothing to do with my backstory or my goals. So I guess if you pay me, I'll do it. But I have important things that I have to do. So if it's for no reason, I'm not going to help you. And the rest of the group, though, and the GM again is, he's getting angry. I'm getting angry. So the other characters came through, and they were like, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll do it. And I'm like, "Okay, well," and I grabbed Mike again. I hit some role play with him, and he convinced me to come with the group, and that's kind of metagaming on my part, that I really tried to stick with the group, but it was the first session, so maybe I shouldn't have metagamed and stayed with them. I always say you should stay true to your character, but it wasn't too much of a stretch, so I ended up going with them. And so we went through some wilderness. And again, I was talking to Mike, and we were starting to role play again. And then we ran. Oh, first we stopped for shopping though. And there was this long, tedious span of the other players going through the rule book and rolling haggle checks and arguing over pricing for equipment, and not in character either. They were completely out of character. You know, I love shopping and haggling in character. That's great. But they were out of character, and they were metagaming. And so that was a half hour, maybe an hour of my life that was wasted when I could have been role playing. But we finally got on the road, and we were going through, and we ran into a busted up caravan. The caravan we were looking for, it was all destroyed and thrown in a ditch. And the occupants of the caravan started to rise as undead, so we sorted them out. So a little combat scene, and then that was pretty much where the first session ended. I'm gonna do the full recap of this group because it won't take long, but right there, it was over, and I didn't like the GM by that point. I thought he lied to me, or he was an idiot. Two of the other players I wasn't very hot on. But I was really hot on Mike. He could roleplay. His character was opulent. So I thought Mike was amazing. He's worth sticking around for. But I talked to the GM after the game, and I was like, this is not what we discussed. You told me it was like a sandbox, and now you're trying to hit us on a railroad. So, which is it? And he said, oh, well, it's a module that I got. It's a Pathfinder Adventure module thing that I bought, and but it says it's very open world and sandbox like, and I'm like, okay, so it's a module, so it's a railroad. That's not what we discussed, but I'm willing to stick around and see where you're gonna go with it. So next session I'll come prepared for a railroad, and we won't have these problems that we're having because of you lying to me. Basically, I said it nicer than that, but we smoothed things out, and I came back for the next session. Now I only came back for Mike Lopez. I didn't. The rest of the group I already had pretty much assessed their capabilities, and I knew I wasn't going to enjoy role playing with them. We were in it for different things. They weren't good at what I wanted. I'm sure I wasn't good at what they wanted because I didn't power game at all. But I came back for Mike Lopez because he's awesome. So we played through the second session. It was really hack and slash. We followed the trail of carnage back into the forest for no apparent reason, and we got in a fight, perhaps with some pixies. We killed these pixies. We had a random encounter where a baby Linorm attacked us, and my character is from the land of the Linorm Kings. So I claimed the body of the Linorm after we killed it, and I rolled it up and put it in my backpack, and I was like, I can use this because I think it's magical. I think it's this amazing creature. So I've got this Linorm in my backpack, and I've got some ways to work it into my storyline. And we come through the third session, and again it was this railroad, very very linear adventure. And again it was just we keep following this trail. There were traps just in the woods for no reason, not like hunting traps, just like ridiculous traps, like a tree falls on you or a log swings in and crushes you. Just walking in the forest, we set these traps off, which didn't make any sense at all. And my character tried to investigate how they knew we'd be coming this specific way and what the purpose of these traps really was. And it all came back to, it's metagaming. It's just there because the GM wanted traps in the middle of the wilderness. So there's nothing in character, in world, no reason for those. And they even had like real treasure. They were looted with they were baited with real treasure. Um, like one of them had a treasure chest, and when you went to open it, some kind of trap triggered. Like the bees fell on you or something, and but the treasure chest actually was full of treasure, which doesn't make any sense if you're trying to trap somebody, if you're trying to lure somebody in. Um, So my in-character investigations led to nothing, and I kept talking about how this was distracting from my actual goal, my actual storylines, and trying to figure out how this tied into them. Basically, I was trying to figure out why does my not why is my character here? That's metagaming. In that there is no reason for me to be here. I'm here because I'm metagaming. So I feel guilty about that, but it was worth it to get Mike Lopez. And but my main thing was like I wrote this backstory and I gave you like 5 NPCs and 5 places and 5 storylines. I gave you all of this stuff to work with, like my own mini module, pretty much. If you want a module, run through my module, and I'll actually care about that module. But he didn't use any of it, right? So all the work I done was for no reason, for nothing. It's wasted. And my character was completely interchangeable with a randomly rolled, pre-generated character. It didn't matter that it was Wolfgar von Erickson or whatever the fuck my name was. It didn't matter that I was there. It could have been Joe Schmo, could have been Rambo. It didn't matter. So that's frustrating to me. And eventually, I could see Mike too. I could see him, hour by hour, session by session, just like fading out as he's trying to roleplay with these clowns, and as he's subjected to combat encounter after silly trap with no reason. There's no reason for his character to go on this storyline either. He had his own goals too, I'm sure, but we're going through, and it was such a tedious slog. And my man Charles was also at this game, and Charles can tolerate this style to a degree, but Charles had some personal problems with the other people at the group. Like I said, they weren't nice people. I can be hard to deal with, but I'll call it straight. If I don't like you, I'll tell you to go fuck yourself. We'll never see each other again. It's all good. I won't sit there and be passive aggressive towards you, which that's a waste of everyone's time in my opinion. And these guys were really passive aggressive towards me and Charles. I don't even know why with Charles, because he was playing that style they like. He likes power gaming, he likes railroads, he likes hack and slash. That's all cool. But he couldn't get along with them personally. I didn't get along with them pretty much just because of our play styles. In real life, I wouldn't have liked him either. But in theory, I could have if they were. If I found them respectable human beings, we could have, in theory. I've met lots of people who have play styles I don't like, but I like them a lot as people. So Charles was quitting. He was like, I can't handle this. These guys are passive aggressive. They're assholes. They have no social skills. They stink. Apparently, they smell bad. I have almost no sense of smell, so I didn't know this, but apparently they smell bad. And Charles was just not digging it, so he was quitting. And I was like, well, if Charles is quitting, I'm quitting too. And I said to Mike, I'm like, Mike, I'm quitting. Charles is quitting. Come with us to our game, and it'll be opulent and excellent. It's all about role playing. It's a real sandbox. Your character matters. So I think you'd get along with us better. And I said to him, think about this game when I'm gone. or when Charles is gone. At least Charles is a nice guy. He at that time he wasn't really speaking in character or anything. Although he can, and he's amazing when he chooses to, but he doesn't need to. That's not his sole enjoyment of the game. Um, but yeah, I said, the nice guy is leaving, the good player are leaving, and I'll be a nice guy when there are other good players around. Not that I wasn't respectful. It's just that there were problems. But we ended up taking Mike with us, and he came to our game. You've heard me talk about him in Return of the Rune Fangs. Amazing player, great guy. So he often brings it up too, that thank God you saved me from that awful game. I'll go through some of these horrible experiences, and I'll record videos because it's kind of funny. But like my actual thinking about them is pretty low. Like I don't really think about bad games I've been in. I don't keep harping on about it. But Mike is so bitter. Like I'm sure I come across as bitter in this game, thinking about it now, but I don't think about it. He thinks about it all the time. So he's really bitter about it, which I think is really funny. But But that's my RPG horror story for Pathfinder. Basically, though, the way to have fixed this would have been to say, we're running a module, your character doesn't matter, it's all going to be hack and slash, and then I wouldn't have shown up. And then, my bad experience would have been 0, and they're dealing with me, because it's not easy to deal with someone with a different playstyle from you. So they wouldn't have had to deal with me. I wouldn't have had to deal with them if they'd just been honest, right up front. I think the reason he lied is because he can't get players for his game, because his style is so bad. So yet he lies and he says it's going to be one thing to attract people, but it's not. So you knew if you're lying, you knew there'd be problems when that came out. If you thought ahead at all. And you still brought me in and let me sit there thinking we're doing X when we're doing Y. So it's natural this would turn into a horror story at that point. So the moral of the story is find people who have the same style as you, and then you'll get along better. And the other moral of the story is when you do find someone that you do enjoy, take them with you. And leave the bad people or the people you don't gel with. So that's my RPG horror story. Fae horror. We were fighting fairies for 3 weeks, and they were not good fairies. Like they weren't role played. They were just they were the same character as the chaotic neutral gnome. They just I'm a fairy illusionist and I play silly pranks. And this is going to be the campaign, just the GM playing silly pranks on you for until you quit because it's annoying as shit. And I did quit, and Charles quit, and Mike quit, and the other guys, they're still playing, and if they're having fun, I wish them the best. I don't think they're having fun though, because they'd argue with each other about mechanical stuff just as much as they'd argue with me about metagame stuff. But anyway, I'm going to sign out now. If you got any Fae horror stories or Pathfinder horror stories or just a horror story about when it didn't gel and when someone lied to you about what the game was going to be, leave that in the comments. I'd love to read about it. If you think it was all my fault and I'm a jackass for showing up expecting something and not being happy when I was spoon-fed something else, then you leave that in the comments and you can tell me why it's all my fault. I'll enjoy reading that too. But everybody have a good day in YouTube land. Cheers.